Hello, I look forward to learning something new with you today. Right now, I'm going over the last video. You don't need to take notes on this video. The last video I made, as you can see here in the classwork sections of Google Classroom, and subjective v objective. This is a video that I linked you to. You don't have to watch that video. That video, I'll just put this here then actually. That video is simply just there as a expands on the ideas. It's more of a philosophy video. And then we have the homework, our classwork, which I'm going to click on right here. And so it has I'm going to go over it really quick. It goes objective information. That does information that does not depend on opinion or perspective. My examples: 2 plus 2 plus 4. Mr. Oleski's 5'9". There's no opinion. But then the subjective means it's an opinion. That addition is easy. It's easy to some. It might be hard to others. Chicken tastes better than ice cream. That's my opinion, but a lot of other people would say ice cream tastes better. It gets yes. So now we're gonna just swoop down to the bottom because I made a mistake, and I just want to make it clear. When I say America's the greatest country in the world, that's subjective, because objective means there's no data. It's not based on opinion. That's something that's an opinion. I could say America produces more corn than any other country in the world. That's objective. I could say America has more land mass than Greece. That's objective. That's a fact. But I could not say objectively that America has the best beaches, because maybe, in my opinion, the beaches in Hawaii are the best in the world. Someone else's opinion, they might find the Jersey Shore is the most beautiful beach in the world, and that seems crazy, but it could. Everyone has their own opinion. Okay. Now, I put this question. A lot of people got it wrong. Michael Jordan is a better basketball player than Mr. Oleski. That is subjective. Just like America's. Obviously, it's much harder for me to argue that that isn't true than it is for someone to argue. If, let's say, a Greek person were to say, I think Greece is a better country than America, America's better in a lot of objective ways. But someone could say, you know what? The landscape in Greece is beautiful. The culture, the way of life is, I enjoy it more. And in the end, it comes down to someone's opinion. Even if there are a lot of objective facts on the other side of the argument, some things are more subjective. Now, somebody said, and this is what brings it up, well, it's all relative. Now, that isn't 100% true, because truth isn't relative. And just because something is subjectively true doesn't mean it's relatively true, or that truth can be relevant. Truth can be subjective, but often it's not relative. There is a truth. There is Michael Jordan is better than me at basketball. It's not just an opinion. I mean, it is an opinion, but sometimes, even though it's subjective, that's as far as we're concerned, practically speaking, you can rely on him being better at basketball than me as much as you can rely on this being a cup, or on my face having a mustache. It's just because it's subjective, and doesn't mean it's all. The truth is relative. Some ideas or things we call truth might be relative, like roses are beautiful. That's much more towards the idea of it being relative, because in our culture we find flowers beautiful, or different things beautiful, while in other cultures they might be different. Like historically, there was a time in history when pink was considered a masculine color, and that's sort of relative. It's now we think of pink, we associate it with girls, but that's basically, I don't know if there's any kind of proof or any sort of absolute thing that makes pink feminine and blue masculine. However, a lot of truth is not relative. It is absolute. So, like, it is absolutely true. That Michael Jordan's better than me at basketball, or that it's better to eat. I mean, Yeah, so that some things are absolutely true, but most things are somewhere there. Like if I were to compare a freshly cooked potatoes, freshly fried on the skillet, than some sort of manufactured fast food, it's it's better to have the home cooked food. You can argue both sides, but that doesn't mean that one isn't better. And just because it's subjective doesn't mean it's not true. Okay, so, or relative. So I'm going to watch these two videos. I'm going to play these two videos on relative truth and on moral relativism. You don't need to take notes, and this is sort of a bonus extra video. So don't get it if the concepts are a little complicated. Don't let it freak you out, because this isn't for your grade and there's no assignment with this. I'm going to post another assignment on the elements of persuasion. I'm going to post another video after this, but this is just to help clear up. So here's a relative truth. Listen to this guy explain it. He explains it pretty well. He talks about his soccer games.
It's the key. Bring your own again, and the coaches are reminding the parent. Hey, my boys just started up soccer again, and the coaches are reminding the parents, hydration, hydration, hydration. That's the key. Bring your own water bottle. Hydrate, and this is the key. We're actually at altitude, so you had a little heat, you have the altitude. It's all about hydration. And I know this is weird, but I had one of these kind of epiphany moments where I went back and I thought about when I was playing sports, and even when I was playing soccer. And water was a reward when I was playing sports. It was something that you be careful. Don't drink too much. You'll get a cramp. So we'd go to the drinking fountain, and the coaches would actually stand there and watch us drink to make sure we didn't drink too much. And we had oranges at halftime instead of drink because, again, you don't want to get a stitch in your side. And I was sharing this with my dad. My dad taught me when he was playing sports. Okay, so now we're out 3 generations. So he's playing sports. What did they do? They took salt tablets. They didn't drink anything. Actually, you took salt tablets to retain the water because you weren't going to ever drink during a sport. And I thought about this. I said, here we are, 3 generations. I've got hydration, 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 water as a reward, and don't even touch water. And yet, what's truth? Now, the reality of it is we have grown in our knowledge of the human body, of nutritional science. But the truth hasn't changed. The truth was always the same. Nutritional science and its effect on our body was the same when my dad was playing sports. It was just bad observational interpretation. And what was fed to us, the mainstream audience, by the popular press and the scientists that were, getting on the back of cereal boxes and things. My point for you here is that I don't think truth changes, but our observational perspective, or what's fed to us, can change over time. So it's something to be aware of, and it's something to put your own mind to. And it's the key here is critical thinking. Because, again, you can be fed a lot, but chew a little before you swallow.
Okay, so what the last term he made is critical thinking. So it's you thinking and you're questioning what you're hearing and learning. So anyway, that was a little video explaining the idea of relative truth, how truth can, but there is always the truth, even if something is subjective. It can be a subjective truths are still truth, and it's not just a relative, and it can be more than just an opinion. So now here's a little bit, it's not really that related, but it's a video on moral relativism. It's something that's a kind of a popular concept that in this point in our society. It'd be interesting, it's just important, I think, to understand this idea. This is not anything you have to take notes on, though.
Moral relativism. Moral relativism is the idea that there is no universal or absolute set of moral principles.
Now, universal, when they use that word, that doesn't mean the universe or space. It just means everyone agrees on it. So you hear in the news, universal healthcare. That just means everyone gets healthcare. Or universal suffrage. That means suffrage means you can vote. Everyone can vote. Or it's universally accepted. Everyone accepts it. Everyone. So it just means everyone. Okay.
It's a version of morality that advocates to each her own, and those who follow it often say, "Who am I to judge?" Moral relativism can be understood in several ways. Descriptive moral relativism, also known as cultural relativism, says that moral standards are culturally defined, which is generally true. Indeed, there may be a few values that seem nearly universal, such as honesty and respect. But many differences appear across cultures when people evaluate moral standards around the world. Metaethical moral relativism states that there are no objective grounds for preferring the moral values of one culture over another. Societies make their moral choices based on their unique beliefs, customs, and practices. And in fact, people tend to believe that the right moral values are the values that exist in their own culture. Normative moral relativism is the idea that all societies should accept each other's differing moral values, given that there are no universal moral principles. Most philosophers disagree, however.
Okay, so that's an important thing to say. You'll realize, you'll hear people say, well, it's just your opinion. And obviously our school has a very specific opinion because it's a Greek Orthodox school. And they'll say, well, obviously as you grow up, you make your own opinions. But it's something to be a little careful of because in some cultures, no, there's not really cultures where it's okay to kill people or it's okay to do, but there's things that are not okay for us, but they're okay for other people. But it's important to always look at that and just say, well, I'm somewhere else, so I'll just completely change what I believe. It's something you should be critical about, so you could observe. Anyway, so most philosophers...
For example, just because bribery is okay in some cultures doesn't mean that other cultures cannot rightfully condemn it. Moral relativism is on the opposite end of the continuum from moral absolutism, which says that there is always one right answer to any ethical question. Indeed, those who adhere to moral relativism would say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Okay, so obviously we don't do everything exactly as Romans did. And that actual phrase actually originated because...
It was St. Ambrose who said it,
Paul,
not St. Paul.
Someone wrote to him, they celebrated the Sabbath on Sunday rather than Saturday. And they said, well, when in Rome, celebrate it when or practice the Sabbath when the Romans practiced the Sabbath. And that's why we do it on Sunday today. That's why if you speak Spanish or Greek, Sabato sounds a lot like Sabbath because that's originally the Sabbath, and somehow it got changed. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and you've learned something. This is just clarifying the other video. These ideas are a little complex and they're just kind of there to help you look at things with a critical mind, and also to put my apology for the mistake I put on your worksheet. I hope that all makes sense, and I'll be posting another video for our next lesson soon. Okay, have a wonderful day.